And we left off in the middle of a chapter last time. So let me just pull that over here. And we're going to pick up in this biography about his educational background. He had done enough work in English for his PhD, according to one associate, but did not take his exams. Toward the end of his life, ML said that if he had to do it over again, he would finish his doctorate. Not that it would have changed his work one iota, but it would have removed any excuse for younger men to minimize his scholarship. A friend remembers, quote, "He told me once that if he had not had a Scandinavian background, he would have preferred to be an English teacher. He felt he could combine all the things that were important to him in teaching English," I think I read this paragraph before, "crowning all with the greatness of the Bible. He told me the moment when the beauty of literature flashed upon him." Do you remember reading in Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice? Quote, "How sweet the moonlight sleeps upon this bank." It was a bursting light that has illuminated my life ever since. I could understand poetry, art, everything. It was President Andreasen who first used the expression. To some people, violin music is only horsehair scratching on catgut. ML expected good scholarship in every phase of study, no matter what course it was, vocational, educational, physical education. He wanted it to be the very best, right up to standard. As to grades, ML simply gave a grade. There could be no further discussion. As for students talking about grades among themselves, he said, "An A student is simply too humble to show his grade, and the poor student is too ashamed to show his." Hence, there was no comparison of grades among students. The grades received from ML were usually a bit disappointing. Receiving a C from him was considered excellent, and an A was simply out of this world. Grades, however, were definitely not to be earned on Sabbath. One Sabbath he dropped into my room in the castle on the 5th floor of the administration building. I forgot to close this out for our recording. Sorry, Pastor. And let me go over here and do this. And welcome to those on the phone. Glad you're with us. But let me continue reading here. One afternoon, he was in the dorm, so to speak, and visited a student in the dorm. Going on, the book says, "I was sitting at the typewriter, working on the book of Isaiah, which we were studying in class, but he reproved me quite severely for studying my lessons on Sabbath. I argued with him a little bit. It was my Bible lesson, so what was the difference? But that did not change matters one iota." Must be the same person talking, using the word iota again. But nevertheless, my words here, true, it was the Bible he was studying, but he was doing his work for his class. But going on, the book says, another student remembers, "On several Sabbath afternoons, I found him walking through the dorm hallway to see whom he would meet. One time we were having a discussion in our room and invited him in to help us. It was one of the outstanding experiences of my college life. The honor of having the president in our room giving us help." ML was highly respected by the students and was very popular on campus. He was invited by the class of 32 to be their sponsor. He was far too busy to give us the supervision we needed, one class member writes. I remember our class being entertained in his home. Vesta was there. We had refreshments and played table games. While he was at Union, he arranged to have music Sabbath noon in the dining room. Purely instrumental, not slow, but good, happy music. He often expressed the thought that Sabbath should be a day of happiness. A number of students chose to be married in the Andreasen home. He tied the knot for us at his house down a block from the corner, one person writes. My soon-to-be mother-in-law, my brother-in-law, and my sister, along with my fiancé, and I were the only ones present. I had been working all summer as a singing evangelist. We were married at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and went right back to work. This was during the Depression. I had put a $10 bill in an envelope which I handed to President Andreasen as we left the house, but he handed it to my wife and said, "Here's your first grocery money." Another recalls, quote, on the day of our wedding, he took my husband and went out looking for students. We've got to hurry. John is getting married tonight, he would tell the people. Then he'd go on talking and talking, and it kept John till supper time, and we were going on the train at 9 o'clock that night. The Andreasens gave us a great big trunk as our wedding present. We were going as missionaries to the Far East. Emil tried to act with impartiality. After President Andreasen's After President Andreasen married us, we lived in a big house that cost more than we could afford, and the furnace didn't work right. The Andreasens were living in an old house with an upstairs apartment for rent, so we moved there. But at the height of the Depression, the business manager insisted that all unmarried faculty members and all married but childless faculty members move into the dorm. Despite President Andreasen's business interests and our friendship, we had to move into the dorm to be fair and square. It cost us a lot of money to do that. We had to eat in the dining room. The rising bell rang at 5 a.m. We had to use the guest bathroom across the hall. But he would show us no partiality. Emil had a policy of not playing favorites with any of his friends. If there were certain ones he enjoyed being with more than others, when it came to those teachers getting something special, he would almost lean over backwards in not letting them have it. If a man was taking university work, his salary would be cut down just to show it wasn't a part of his regular work, much as ML wanted him to go ahead with his education. ML wouldn't have his daughter work in any place where he was at. That would be nepotism, he felt. Vesta's 1 year of teaching at Union was a last resort. He was generous with his money. If a friend asked for help, he'd take the money right out of his pocket. When later the money was returned, he would act surprised, apparently having forgotten about it. ML had his office door fixed so that when someone knocked, he could press a button and the door would automatically open. One day he pressed the button in response to a knock. ML tells the story. A lady started to enter. Just as she came in, I must have leaned forward slightly, and my weight caused the chair to collapse, which left me sitting on the floor with my chin hanging on the desk. I never was sure, but that chair had been tampered with by some prankster. A teacher recollects. An old woman, a church member, but a little addled, who lived across the street from the college, claimed to be a prophetess. She got the clock tower commencement number containing the faculty pictures and gave us all Bible prophet names. I think I was Amos. She had a man, also an Adventist, more or less under her influence, whom she sent to Andreasen with a big basket of fruit, first fruits. President Andreasen wouldn't have a thing to do with it. The man determined to deliver it anyway and set it on the table in the registrar's office. Andreasen strongly objected to that, but the girls in the office didn't have the same idea and made the fruit disappear. His first major book, The Sanctuary Service, came out in 1937. Dr. Everett Dick's work, The Sodhouse Frontier, came out at the same time. And I have a picture of the cover of that book. Let me just post it here, just a moment. Okay, here's the only picture I could find of the Sod House Frontier, 1854 to 1890 by Everett Dick. Now, I want to just tell you, Everett Dick had a doctorate. He taught at Union College. He was there as Andreasen is writing these words and these experiences. He was there at Union. And he published this book, The Sod House Frontier. But at the same time, Andreasen had his book, The Sanctuary Service, published. In chapel one day, M.L. told the school about Dr. Dick's achievement and spoke of the glowing book report in the New York Times and that his colleague had become a nationally known author almost overnight. And then he observed, "It so happens that my own book has just been published, but I have not heard anyone comment. Therefore, I assume that my personal achievement, if not a failure, has become quite eclipsed by my colleagues." Later on, many recognized that the sanctuary service was really a masterpiece. And we're studying the sanctuary, my words now, in Sabbath school. And this is one reference book that's really helpful, The Sanctuary Service. So he didn't get recognition at the time. And Dr. Dick was head of the history department there at Union College for many years. And he published this book. He published another book on the history of the Great Plains, etc. And he seemed to get recognition, but not Dr. or Professor Andreasen at the time, anyway. More than one student tells how he walked a short distance with Andreasen, mentioned having read his book, and heard him ask, "Do you suppose it's also?" Students recognized the close relationship between M.L. and his wife. Annie Andreasen was the hitching post for the family. He respected her very, very much. She was a great stabilizing influence on him. He knew it and was proud of it. The students knew it. Hence, when the time came for M.L.'s farewell from Union College, the students had his wife on the platform with him, sitting in a rocking chair. The program ended with President and Mrs. Andreasen leaving the platform, she carrying a big basket of flowers. Arm in arm, they walked down the aisle and out of the chapter. And our next chapter begins, entitled Accreditation. One day early in his presidency at Union College, ML came into the library and saw a bound set of North Central Association quarterlies. What in the world would you spend money binding those North Central reports for? He exclaimed. But when it came to the problem of accreditation a few years later, those reports came to be one of his most useful tools. Webster defines accreditation as, quote, recognition of an educational institution as maintaining standards that qualify the graduates for admission to higher or more specialized institutions or for professional practice. In this setting, ML could say, I felt that it was a disgrace to the denomination to give students a pre-medical course in an unaccredited school. On June 5, 1934, he wrote to the field, quote, as is well known, for some years there has been a definite movement in this denomination for the accrediting of our colleges. For many years, Union College has been accredited with the state and the University of Nebraska as a 16-grade college and has had junior accreditation with the North Central Association, the entity whose full accreditation was crucial. The standards of the North Central Association are very high, and much is demanded. We believe, however, the standards can be met without violating any of the principles for which the denomination stands. Accordingly, we made application this year to the North Central Association for full accreditation. In response to the application, the association's inspector visited Union that same year. In his report, he commented favorably on the attitude of students and faculty, on the curriculum, the library and laboratories, and on the general condition of the physical plant and other aspects of the college. He ended by commenting, Union College is doing a very good work with a fine type of students, end quote. With this in mind, the association's Board of Review voted to extend the time for accreditation. A teacher recalls ML tried to find out what colleges were supposed to be about. He tried to make a genuine college of it, one that would stand up to the scrutiny of the world. He found out what would be required for accreditation. The faculty was with him. The students were with him. The board wasn't always. There are many colleges in which the president thinks of the faculty as the servants of the president. Not he, otherwise the college never would have become accredited. He treated them like human beings. If you let people help you decide the policy, they will feel part of it. If you do not, they don't. Another teacher observed, striving for accreditation, he wanted it to be not so much a school of scholastic accomplishments as one with an outstanding labor program for the students. The dean worked out a system of grading them for their work. If a student was 5 minutes late for a work appointment, he lost a point, which in turn reduced his hourly rate. This systematic training of the students in responsibility toward work was one of the outstanding contributions made in favor of accreditation. Okay, going on. ML resumes his account. The faculty had to become acquainted with the aim of the school. What are you doing to qualify yourselves for it? Faculty members had to be ready to answer any question the accreditation committee came up with. They could not give generalities for answers because the association was very strict. The North Central Association men were quite considerate. One, a Church of the Brethren man, said, "You must make chapel exercises accomplish something. Form an objective. 300 students should receive something at a chapel hour. Chapel should not merely occupy their time. Are you accomplishing what you set out to do? Are the students any better Adventists when they leave than when they came? Do they stay in the denomination after graduation?" He brought a challenge to us. You have to have graphs showing you are accomplishing what you are after. The North Central is not telling you what to teach, but is inquiring, are you doing good work in what you undertake? We had no records of what we had done, nor stated objectives of what we were after. We had the golden cords as a symbol and tradition, but this was a rather meager report of 50 years of work. When he was done, I saw that we had something to do, something that I hadn't done, and that had not been done before. A secretary remembers, we are more or less feeling our way. We'd have to work all hours of the night and day, skip school if necessary, copying reports and things. We had to get it done in time for the meetings. ML would embarrass me years after, reminding me of the days when we could have laughed as well as cried when we had to work such long hours. ML picks up the story. We rallied our forces. We worked, we prayed, we studied. One group learned how to use the slide rule and made all kinds of computations, statistics, graphs, comparisons, percentages, etc. The whole faculty met every week to report and discuss. Some sat up late at night. The inspectors came and met with the faculty and asked various questions, and the faculty tried to give the best possible answers. At the time of the third inspection of the college by the North Central inspectors, they talked with teachers and students, challenging them. Where are you from? They asked an undergraduate. Minnesota. Can you give me any reason why you passed up the University of Minnesota and came to a little insignificant college like Union College? They couldn't have picked better students. They talked with several and were much impressed. ML also was interrogated. They asked him one question. He thought for a moment and responded, "Frankly, gentlemen, I must tell you that I simply don't know the answer." And the reply he got was, "Well, Reverend Andreasen, we don't know the answer either." At length came the North Central meeting at which the decision would be made. Andreasen recounts, and so I went to Chicago. The night before the decision would be announced, I did not sleep. The president of our sister school, which was also up for decision, had informed me that he had heard that his school would be accepted and Union rejected. But for me not to worry, he would take over our students. It was doubtless he meant well, but was not much comfort. There were 7 schools up for decision. Albion College, Albion, Michigan. Application for accreditation as a 16-grade college, came the words, very slowly and very deliberately and with irritating pauses. Application denied. Our sister school was next. Again, the long and slow words, and then Application denied. My heart sank. What hope was there for us? Union was seventh and last. It seemed to me I could not live long enough to hear our doom. Union College, Lincoln, Nebraska, application for accreditation as a 16th grade school, a pause that seemed to last for an eternity, and then the words, application granted. It was a terrific moment. It was the supreme moment of my life. Union was the last of the schools and the only one accepted. When I came to, I asked immediately to meet with the committee. I went to plead for our sister school, for this was the last opportunity to apply for several years. And to be turned down meant that the graduates that present year would be turned down by the medical school and would be unable to begin their medical work. Then I sent a telegram and started home on the first train. I came into the chapel the next morning, right after the program had begun. I was cheered to the echo and escorted to the platform to receive the plaudits of the assembly. And in the midst of it, I wept. I told the students that we should be happy, but decently happy, not vaunting ourselves. I was happy that the medical students would not be handicapped because they had finished their pre-medical course in an unaccredited school. Next chapter, Vespers. One of ML's colleagues asked him what he felt was his greatest contribution to Union College. My contribution was the Friday evening meeting. He worked out the beautiful, quiet Friday evening that consisted of several numbers by a string ensemble led by Professor C.C. Engel, a quiet song sung without string accompaniment, a reading of certain scriptures in unison, and very short talks, which he gave every Friday night that he was in town. It was the consensus that this was an outstanding spiritual factor in the administration of Andreasen. Friday night meetings were his favorite times, another colleague recollects. He wanted them just so. They would begin with quiet music to put everybody in a meditative mood or frame of mind. The Engel Ensemble would play Bach or Beethoven for 20 minutes to half an hour. Then the ministers would come onto the platform. We had started a new song which we were to swell from pianissimo when the prayer was finished. Usually there was a vocal duet or solo or quartet. Then, in his quavering voice, ML would start us out with Beautiful Valley of Eden, or maybe Sweet Hour of Prayer. We knew all three stanzas of each by heart and never tired of them. The last stanza would be sung unaccompanied, and ML would sing bass. Then Elder Andreasen would give the message, which didn't exceed 20 minutes. It might be from the book of Hebrews, or the life of Christ, or an illustration of some quality that ought to be emphasized in our lives. Often, there would be a testimony service or a call, but not a lot of emotional appeal as such. Elder Andreasen's forceful way of illustrating Bible truth and his interesting manner of presenting it would be the appeal. The response of the 400 students was so spontaneous that it would always occupy all the time he would allow. It would be 9 or 9:15 before we got out, having started at 7:30 or 7:45. It seems that Union College students of the Andreasen years remember his Friday evening vespers more than anything else. Others have tried to imitate them, but no one has been able to do them quite the way he did. 20 years after ML left Union, a group of former students arranged for him to conduct a typical Vesper service at Minneapolis. This was recorded. Excerpts from the tape state. It was a revelation to me when I found out that violins could not only play, but praise. There are sounds so pure, so wonderful in music, that they move me to my innermost being or inmost being, and I say, I must be a better man. It's too bad I don't remember all the good students. I remember the bad ones. I had them in, so I know them quite well. But that is all forgotten, and we all love the Lord together, and that's wonderful. Friday evening holds sweet memories for me. It goes back to the beginning of my experience as a Seventh day Adventist. In those days, heaven was very real. We believed in the life hereafter. We were in the first love of the truth, and we loved one another and we loved the Lord, and so we came together, sang a little and prayed a little. Again and again we read those statements concerning that which is to be, which I read tonight. He showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal. In our childlike faith, we took this as real, and I still believe it to be real. We would read the 23rd Psalm, He leadeth me beside still waters. We took that to mean just what it said, that the time will come when the Lord Himself will lead us, and I believe that is true in a very literal way. I believe that God in heaven looks down in tender compassion upon us, even here this evening, unfaithful as we have been, unworthy as we are. The Lord loves us, and wonderful is that love. I wonder how some people can love me, and I suppose you wonder how some can love you, and all of us wonder how God can love us when He knows our many shortcomings and our many failures. As God knows and loves, God understands. If we could only learn to be a little more like God, a little more like our Master, kind and understanding, merciful. If we could learn to look at the good things rather than the bad, we could have a heaven here on earth. That is what I am having here tonight. I am having a little heaven. We can think of what it will be when, in the world made new, we shall meet never to part. You say, that isn't so good if we are never to part. I can be good for a little while, but if I stay with you a long time, I'm not sure you'd be convinced of my goodness. Hence it is necessary, if we are all to be together forever, that we learn to live here, now, in such a way that the love of God can prevail in our hearts. Christianity is love. Christianity is understanding. Christianity means adaptation. It means giving up our own ways and being sweet about it. And so now tonight, Friday evening in the world's history as well, the sun is sinking silently. It will be but a little while, and he that shall come will come and will not tarry. We cannot expect things will continue to be peaceful very much longer. And when the calamities of the last days are upon us, when thousands shall fall at our side and 10,000 at our right hand, will we be hid under the shadow of the Almighty? Those are solemn thoughts, but worthwhile even this evening. Thanks be to God. We have one who is above all earthly sorrows and calamities, and who can take care of and protect his people. And of that we have been promised. The fourth chapter of Isaiah has become very precious to me. It speaks of the time just before the Lord shall come, that final year we have all been interested in and are all interested in, when probation closes and God's people pass through the last suffering, the time of Jacob's trouble. I read, "In that day shall the branch of the Lord be beautiful and glorious." That's God's people. "And the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely for them that are escaped of Israel. And it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion and he that remaineth in Jerusalem shall be called holy, even every one that is written among the living in Jerusalem." Can you see the shaking there? We may expect a shaking, and many will be shaken out. Some are shaken out already, but those that remain faithful, every one shall be called holy. When the Lord shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion by the spirit of judgment and by the spirit of burning, God will cleanse his people by the spirit of judgment and by the spirit of burning. And the Lord will create upon every dwelling place of Mount Zion a cloud and smoke by day, and the shining of a flaming fire by night. You have read how, during the last struggle, when persecution shall come, some of God's people will have to flee, and some shall be incarcerated, even in dungeons, alone and apparently forsaken. I have said, "Lord, save me from that." I don't think I have the strength to go through that experience, but I can take courage, for I know that as thy days, so shall thy strength be. So I need not worry over that. But most of God's people will be permitted to be together in small companies. That thought has been a wonderful blessing to me. I can stand a great deal when I know there's someone around who loves me. That gives a man courage and hope. If we are permitted to be together in small companies, what a glorious thing it will be. End quote. ML's opinion of his greatest contribution to Union College was probably correct. His reputation of, for being able to provide spiritual inspiration was established there. I will never forget Elder Andreasen's Vesper talks. They were of great spiritual value to me, has been the sentiment of many. His sermons were equally helpful. I remember a sermon he preached that helped me to drive my doubts away. Or I recall a sermon he preached on the spirit of prophecy that established my faith in this, the great gift to the church. Undoubtedly, M.L. knew how to speak to hearts and minds. Next chapter, Seminary. The accreditation of Union College, this is M.L. speaking, had some repercussions in Washington. Perhaps I was not a total loss. Against tremendous odds, Union College had become accredited. The constituency was beginning to rally to the school, and the city itself was aware of the existence of the school and the need of supporting it. Union College was on the way, and while we all knew well that it was the result of teamwork, nevertheless, as head of the school, I received some credit. I should give public acknowledgement of the many who helped in this accreditation struggle. I began making a list of names of those who deserved special mention, but I had to give up. For while one might deserve great credit, there were others who deserved the same, and there were among the students those who deserved the highest praise. Some sat up night after night doing valuable charts and needed calculations and never received a penny for their most valuable work. No man deserves special credit for the success of the accreditation. 100 persons do. Things were beginning to look up educationally in the denomination, and the need of an advanced school for young ministers was being felt. Many young men were coming into the ministry, but there was no place to which they could go and do any advanced work. Also, each Bible teacher taught what he had been taught, and all did not teach alike. Different views on some subjects were being set forth, and in this time, this might lead to, and in time, this might lead to difficulties. We did not need a university, such was not even mentioned, but we did need an advanced Bible school. But who could or would teach in such a school? His responsibilities would be great. He must be orthodox. I shall not attempt to tell the story or weary the reader, but at last the lot fell on me. I had some of the needed qualifications, but was I, quote unquote, safe? Would they dare to put me in charge and leave the biblical education of all young ministers to me? What would I teach on various subjects, some of which were in dispute? After long counseling, it was at last decided to conduct a kind of trial school where only Bible teachers and general officers would attend. End quote by Andreasen. The Central Union Reaper of July 3, 1934 reports, quote, President M.L. Andreasen, accompanied by his wife and daughter, is en route to Pacific Union College, Angwin, California, where he will instruct in the Advanced Bible School during the second term of the second session. Shortly before his departure, the Union College Summer School faculty and students gave a surprise picnic supper in Pioneer Park in the honor of his 58th birthday. The Reaper, August 14, quote, Advanced Bible School. The enrollment is 33 to date. The students are teachers in our colleges and academies. All but 2 of the 9 union conferences in North America are represented, and 4 foreign divisions. M.E. Kern is secretary. W.W. Landon and G.M. Price are teaching classes. Lectures have been by A.G. Daniels, W.A. Spicer, William Branson, L.E. Froome. A number are expressing hope that the idea of an advanced school of technology may be maintained and that the school may become a permanent feature of our educational system. ML resumes his account. I was to conduct a school such as I would in the school itself when it was established. The students, denominational officers, would sit in school benches and raise their hands as other students when they wanted to speak. But they could ask any question that occurred to them and present their views. We decided that we would give opportunity for expression, take the Bible for our textbook, and ascertain whether we could speak freely on Bible subjects and in the end come out Seventh day Adventists. The rankest heresy might be propounded, and we would discuss it freely, express our opinions, but reserve the right to change our views if we saw we were wrong without any embarrassment. It was an interesting class held at Pacific Union College in the summertime. There was no summer school there. It was interesting to see such students, and I must admit that it was interesting for me to find myself teacher for such a group. When I had misbehaved, they they had sent me up to stand in the corner. Now I could send them up, but no one was sent up to stand in the corner. We had a delightful time, and after a little embarrassment for a few days on the part of some to find themselves in school again, all entered heartily into the school program. Perfect freedom prevailed, and no one took offense if others disagreed with him. Again and again, some would deliver an oration on a certain point of doctrine, and in a few minutes retract it all. One day a veteran discoursed on creation. Another veteran rose to a point of order and stated in effect and in words, Brother X, I have listened intently to all you have said, and I must confess I do not see a bit of sense in your ideas. We were a little apprehensive, for the first speaker was a kind of authority. To our astonishment, he got up and, looking at the second speaker, unhesitatingly said, That is just what I was thinking, and completely reversed himself and went on with his speech. Another speaker denied the deity of Christ and used some common arguments. A Bible teacher arose when the first speaker had finished and said, The arguments you have used are exactly the ones Satan used in heaven. I know now what you are. You are a Luciferian. Next day he apologized, and no harm was done. Another veteran arose one day and said, Brother Andreasen, I don't believe what you are now saying. I have preached the opposite for 40 years, and you are the first to say that I am wrong. I let the matter pass, but later in the class I turned to him and asked whether he still held to his opinion. He affirmed he did. I let the matter go, but once more at the conclusion of the class I asked whether he was of the same opinion. This time he banged his fist on the desk and said, I have always believed and preached this and always shall. I knew that when that man banged his fist, he was in earnest. It took him 3 days, to come around. Then he got up and said he had been wrong, and we were good friends again. We learned in that class that we could disagree and remain friends. It was a wonderful time we had, and a profitable one. We were every day coming close to one another and to truth, and at the conclusion of the institute, it was decided that I was, quote unquote, safe, and that I could teach the new school. The review editor even stated in his paper, Andreasen is always orthodox. And just one more paragraph and we'll stop. So the school began with Elder Emmy Kern as principal and me as Bible teacher. It was all very primitive, but it soon demonstrated that such an institution was needed. As long as the school was located in California and was held only in the summertime, I continued as president of Union College, and each summer went west to Pacific Union. After 3 summers at Pacific Union College, it was moved to Washington, D.C., where it was installed in the Review and Herald cafeteria building. Let's see. We have a few more paragraphs, maybe. A secretary recalls when we'd have family worship that summer, we were out there. He'd have a book of theological philosophy or something he was reading. He'd read a sentence, sit there thinking about it, expound upon it, and then go on. That developed in me an interest in theology. Another student says, we first met him when we went to the seminary in 1937. I never sat at the feet of anyone who made me think so hard. He took my mind and stretched it until I thought it would break. Indeed, behind Elder Andreasen's desk in the seminary building that was soon built was a neatly framed motto, think things through. He asked people to think and to appreciate what they discovered. ML had his own philosophy of teaching, and maybe we should stop there. We'll pick this up next time, Lord willing, and I hope you come back. Let's close with prayer, shall we? Father, we do thank you for your great love for us in spite of what we've done, what we thought, what we've desired, how we've influenced others in the negative in the past. You have great patience with us, Father, and please make us into your image. Um, we're willing to be made willing, and we want to work with you in this great plan of salvation. So be with each one of us this evening as we go through the rest of the week. May we walk in your paths. May we walk with you as Enoch did. And please guide our, our desires to follow your plan for us, whether to be in the country or perhaps we're not able at this point, but you can guide us and you can open the doors for us. So we ask that for each one of us. Be with Sister Spencer in a special way, I ask, and the rest of us, that we will not deny you in any way. Help us to be faithful, I ask, in Jesus' name. Amen.